We've been married for 16 years, and we have 6 kids. And for most of our marriage, we've struggled financially. Always been behind in our bills and trying to get things paid off. And at one point, we almost had our house foreclosed on and our car repossessed. Our kids couldn't do a lot of things as far as sports. We had to take them out of sports. When they would ask us to do certain things as far as activities or going places, we'd have to say no a lot. And we were, a lot of times, just didn't know where the next meal was going to come from. We got to a point where we owed about $30,000 in loans and credit card debt. At one point, I just broke down in my kitchen because I couldn't support our family. That was kind of the here, and something had to change. We had our Post-it note up on the mirror, and so I just kept looking at that goal. We had a plan in mind. We put everything down on paper and just went after it.
Brian, you have a beautiful family.
Thank you.
Isn't that a beautiful family Brian has? Absolutely gorgeous. Talk a bit more about your story, how you got into the debt and what you did, about how you got out of it.
Sure. Well, we started off in our marriage like a lot of couples do. You know, we saw rolling hills and roses and daisies and thought everything was going to be great. And then reality set in. There were some loans brought into the marriage. Our oldest daughter had heart surgery when she was first born. And then we just made decisions. You know, we did stupid with dollar signs over and over again, like many of us do. And before long, we just found ourselves with a mound of debt. And it was just excruciating and very painful. We had to tell our kids around Christmas time, we had to prepare them for it and say, hey, you know, Christmas is going to be a little different this year. There were times when we were driving in the car and you have that constant fear of when the car is going to break down next. And the brakes were going bad, and it was a dangerous situation. You know, you knew at some point the brakes would go bad, but you didn't know where the money was going to come from. And we'd have to borrow money from our relatives. And Thanksgiving dinner is a lot different when you owe money to your relatives sitting across the table from you. And it's a very humbling thing to have to do that. So it was a hard time for us. And at one point, like I said in the video, in the kitchen, I just broke down and started crying, because as a man and a provider for the family, that is your role, is you're supposed to provide for your family, and I couldn't at that point. And I just saw no way out. And pretty close to that time, a couple in our church offered to put us through a financial class. And so we took the class, and it was life-changing for us. One of the main principles of the class was to put everything, to have a budget and stick to that budget, putting everything down on paper so every penny had a name, every dollar that you spent had a name, so we were in control of our money instead of the money controlling us. And in a matter of 3 years, we were able to pay off $30,000 in debt.
Absolutely unbelievable. Great story. Thank you, Brian. What were some of the roadblocks that you faced along the way?
Well, as far as when we started the plan, and I know you asked me this earlier, Jim, that you asked me if there's any unexpected things, and that was the great thing about the plan. Was the very first thing they asked you to do on the plan is, as soon as you can, build a $1,000 emergency fund right away. Put all your efforts with intensity, put a $1,000 fund in place. The reason for that is because Murphy's Law. If something bad is going to happen, it will happen. And so when we were driving in our car and the brakes went out or we had to get something fixed, we didn't worry because the emergency fund was there. We weren't taking 2 steps forwards and then 3 steps back because we had that emergency fund in place. And so that was huge to be able to have that. If something broke down, if one of our, we have got 6 kids and laundry is going all the time. And so we're the perfect test family for a laundry machine. And so the laundry machine would go out and we'd have to replace that. Not to worry, we've got an emergency fund in place so we can keep continuing on our plan.
You know, the last 2 panels, we talked explicitly about something we haven't talked this week, so I'd like to put you on the spot and ask you, Brian, what role your faith and prayer have played in your journey?
It's huge. I don't know how people go through the things that we go through or through any hard times without Christ. And the verse that Marcia mentioned earlier was key. I can do all 3 things through Christ who gives me strength. And that was huge. We leaned on him through the whole thing. And there were times when we didn't know where the next meal was going to come from. And that very week, we received a check in the mail for $100 and from an anonymous person. And we were able to feed our family. Another time, our house was about to be foreclosed on, and it was down to the wire. We received an escrow check in the mail that saved us. And I believe that was God providing for us. And as we look back, we can always see that God has provided for us no matter what we've been through.
So this anonymous gift and the escrow check arriving just in time prompts me to ask you about your support network. Can you talk a bit about?
Sure. Our support network was Catherine's, my wife's dad. He was a huge support because I was working lots of hours, and he would watch our kids, and so that was huge, as well as friends that we had told about the program, and they had started on their own debt-free journey, and by their enthusiasm and their encouragement, we were able to continue.
Our team members here at Defender, I think, need to understand we're never alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you're not in this alone. No matter, where you're at, he's there for you. And, he's ready to surround you. His arms are open wide, and all you have to do is say yes, and he's there for you.
And team members are here, folks like you. And folks like our subject matter experts that we've been introducing that you can lean into.
Right. And I'd like to just share, too, just a few things and what kind of got us to where our there is, the hard work that went through. For one, my wife was a couponer. She was an extreme couponer, and so that was huge for us to help us save money. When I was working, when I came to Defender, that was a huge income increase for us. But what I did at the start of the year when I first got on the phones, I put a picture up of my family, and I said to myself, I've got to get 1 sale for every person in my family, and I wasn't leaving until that was happening. So
and that included you.
That included me, yeah. And so I would work through, and I would eat lunch at my desk, and I think John Mobley and the video team called me out on that with that guy video. But I was working through that, and by the end of the year, I was looking at this number the other day. I had the most sales of any ADT sales agent with 1,436 sales that year, and it was just huge for us.
Brian, many people face similar situations. The numbers might change the circle, but at the end of the day, similar. Do you have 1 or 2 specific pieces of advice for those people?
Absolutely. Let me say this. You can do it. No matter where you are, no matter what your circumstances is, no matter how tall the mountain is, if we can do it with 6 kids, you can too. The Bible says the borrower is slave to the lender. I want you to do one thing, something you can do right now. Take out a piece of paper, and this is the biggest takeaway for us from the class. You go out and buy a can of pop, you go to McDonald's or wherever you go to eat, write it down. That's the first start into starting your journey. And then the other thing is motivation. You got to have the motivation, and you have to say, enough is enough.
Great advice. What's your next there?
Our next there is a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, and that's we want to have that done by the end of this year, and that's 3 to 6 months of salary for us.
Great, good. Well, you've mentioned classes, a class that you took, and we, in keeping with the format here, have another subject matter expert I'd like to welcome to the stage, Peter Dunn.
Sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah.
Hello. How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Pete, you have an alter ego, don't you?
I do, Pete the Planner, like Bob the Builder, or Carol the Carpenter. I
How'd
don't
that
know.
come about? A lot of people, not many people have an alter ego. At least they're not out there with it, you know?
Yeah, it kind of stuck. So my job, certainly here at Defender, is to help give you good financial tips and advice that can help you make changes just like Brian. We've got 30 programs in person this year. We've got web resources, and it's just about wherever you are in your journey financially to give you what you need.
That's great. We have a terrific reputation.
Thank you.
We're very grateful to have you on our team.
I appreciate that.
Picking up on a question I asked Brian, what one or two pieces of advice would you have for folks that are facing similar situations?
Yeah, for me, change is pretty interesting. So you go to make a change, whether it's weight or financial or something like that. You only change because things get so bad that you're forced to change, or you get a vision of what can be. And so I think if you're somewhere in the middle where things aren't terrible for you financially, but they're not great, you're actually in a really dangerous position, because you're just going to float around in that until things get so bad that you're going to be forced to change, or until you decide, you know what, I need to focus more on this. And not every situation is like Brian's. I mean, it can be simply that you have no debt, but you haven't saved any money, which is simply, unacceptable going forward for your future. So that's the first thing, is getting a vision of what can be. And personally, visualization's been really big for me in my financial health and my career, visualizing a moment. Say, when I get there, do you know how great it's going to feel to not pay $3,000 a month in minimum interest payments? Jim, I alluded earlier this week, met a young man from Chicago, makes $120,000 a year, pretty good income there, and has a 785-point credit score, that's pretty nice, and has $90,000 in credit card debt, that he pays nearly $4,000 a month in minimum interest payments. It tells us a few things there.
And that's just the interest.
That's just the interest. He can't budge. He can't budget based on that. Budge it or budget, oddly enough. A couple things to take note. Number one, there's a lot to consider around your credit score. A lot of times we really buy in that we're trying to get a great credit score. That's just not reality. If I wanted to lose 50 pounds, I could just hack off my leg and be like, I lost 50 pounds. But that's not the measure we want. With your credit score, you can do a lot of weird stuff to manipulate it and make it go up, but who cares? You're still financially unhealthy. And in this guy's situation, $90,000 in credit card debt, the 785-point credit score, he kept saying to me, but I got a 785. I was like, dude, you're paying $4,000 a month in interest. Of course, Jim, I didn't call him dude because I'm a professional.
Mr. Dude.
Sir, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is an insidious thing, isn't it?
It is. Now, sometimes debt's often made out to be evil, that it's the enemy. But really, aren't our poor decisions and ill behaviors really the bad part? Like, the debt didn't do anything, we did it. So a lot of times when we go buy a house we can't afford, we get mad at the bank, or we get mad at the builder. You buy a car you can't afford, you're like, nah, Toyota, darn you. It's not that. It's your behavior. If you blame other people for your financial situation, you don't really have the power to fix it. You gotta own it, and then you can fix it. So, in my professional life, I'll take blame faster than anyone you've ever met in your life, because that means I get to fix it. You know, if I'm pointing my fingers and Sally did it or whoever, then it's not up to me to fix it. So I think with your financial life, just own it and move forward.
Pete, some of the programs that you'll be involved with and offering to our team members.
Yeah, we